He whisked me away to a mountain cabin after our wedding. Romantic, right? But every night he'd vanish to meditate. No intimacy. No touch. Just silence. When I asked, he said, "Celibacy deepens connection." So I filed annulment papers. Then I found hidden cameras. And a shrine with my face on it. I found the hidden cameras on our honeymoon. That moment shattered everything I thought I knew about Noah. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning when I still believed in fairy tales. We're almost there, Noah said, navigating the rental car around another hairpin turn. The mountains rose majestically around us, their peaks disappearing into wisps of cloud. I squeezed his hand on the gearshift, my wedding ring still feeling foreign and magical on my finger. "I can't believe we actually did it," I whispered, more to myself than to him. Just 3 months ago, we'd been strangers making eye contact across a crowded bookstore. Now I was Madison Wells. No, Madison Blackwood, driving to a secluded mountain cabin for our honeymoon. When Noah had suggested eloping after only 11 weeks of dating, my sister Ava thought I was having a mental breakdown. "Madison, you've never been impulsive a day in your life," she'd said during our last phone call. "You plan your grocery trips 2 weeks in advance. Now you're marrying a guy you barely know." But that was exactly why I did it. 28 years of careful planning had gotten me a sensible apartment, a stable job teaching 3rd grade, and exactly 0 great love stories. Noah was different. Intense, spiritual, looking at me like I was the answer to questions he'd been asking his whole life. The cabin appeared around the bend and my breath caught. It was perfect. Rustic logs with a wide porch surrounded by towering pines, not another building in sight. "It's beautiful," I said, turning to Noah with a smile that faltered when I saw his expression. Something had changed in his face the moment the cabin came into view. The warmth in his eyes had dimmed, replaced by something distant. "Noah." I touched his arm. He blinked and the moment passed. "Let's get our bags inside." The interior was everything the online listing had promised. Stone fireplace, plush furniture, huge windows framing mountain views. Noah carried our luggage and while I explored, running my fingers along the smooth wooden countertops in the kitchen, testing the softness of the king-sized bed upstairs. "This is going to be amazing," I called down to him, imagining cozy nights by the fire, hikes to nearby waterfalls and long, languid mornings in bed. I'd packed some special lingerie that had made the saleswoman at the boutique raise her eyebrows. When Noah didn't answer, I went back downstairs to find him standing in the center of the living room, staring blankly out the window. "Everything okay?" I asked, sliding my arms around his waist from behind. He stiffened at my touch. "Fine. Just tired from the drive." That night, I made pasta with the groceries we'd picked up in the last town before the mountain roads began. Noah barely touched his food, answering my excited chatter about our plans for the week with single words. The silence between us grew, filled only by the clink of forks against plates and the occasional distant hoot of an owl. "Maybe we should open some wine?" I suggested, trying to recapture the easy intimacy we'd had during our short courtship. "I think I'll pass," Noah said, standing abruptly. "I need to clear my head. The altitude, you know." Before I could respond, he was pulling on his jacket. "I'm going for a walk. Now. It's getting dark. I won't go far." The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow seemed louder than a slam would have been. I sat alone at our romantic dinner table, the pasta growing cold. This wasn't how I'd imagined our first night. Maybe he really was just tired, I reasoned. The wedding, the drive, it was a lot to process. Tomorrow would be better. But tomorrow brought more of the same. Noah was polite but distant, moving around me like we were roommates rather than newlyweds. When I suggested a hike to a nearby lake, he agreed without enthusiasm. The forest around us was breathtaking, sunlight filtering through ancient trees, wildflowers dotting the path, but I couldn't enjoy it with the wall I felt growing between us. "Isn't this perfect?" I asked, gesturing to the crystal blue lake when we reached it. A family of ducks skimmed across the surface, leaving gentle ripples in their wake. "It's very peaceful," Noah replied, his voice flat. "That's all you have to say?" The words burst out before I could stop them. "Noah, what's going on? Since we got here, you've been different." He looked at me, then really looked at me for the first time since our arrival. "I'm sorry, Madison. I just need time to adjust. This place, it has a certain energy. I feel it calling me to go deeper." Deeper into what? Myself, he said simply. That night, after another quiet dinner, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I drew a bath in the cabin's enormous clawfoot tub, scattering rose petals I'd packed for just such an occasion on the water's surface. I put on the black silk negligee, applied a touch of the perfume Noah had once said drove him wild, and waited in our bed. An hour passed. Then another. The petals in the bath wilted and sank. The cabin had become unsettlingly quiet. No creaking floorboards, no sounds of Noah moving around downstairs, just the occasional moan of wind through the pines that suddenly seemed less romantic and more eerie. Finally, I wrapped myself in a robe and went looking for him. I found Noah cross-legged on the porch, eyes closed, breath forming small clouds in the cold night air. Noah. My voice sounded small even to my own ears. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused, like he was returning from somewhere far away. Madison. You should be asleep. I was waiting for you. The silk under my robe suddenly felt foolish rather than seductive. I'm meditating, he said, as if that explained everything. At midnight? In the cold. This is a sacred place, he said. I can feel it. The mountains, the solitude, it's perfect for deepening my practice. Your practice. In our whirlwind romance he'd mentioned being spiritual, but this level of devotion was news to me. Meditation. Connection to the universal energy. He looked at me with something like pity. You should try it. It's more fulfilling than. His eyes flicked to my robe, clearly seeing the negligee underneath. Physical distractions. I went to bed alone that night, the silk negligee stuffed into the bottom of my suitcase. As I lay awake listening to Noah's continued absence, the shadows from the trees outside cast moving patterns across the ceiling that seemed to be reaching toward me. The next 3 days established a pattern. During daylight hours, Noah would go through the motions of our planned activities. Hiking, visiting a small mountain town, even picnicking by a stream, but there was no joy in it. No connection. Each night he would disappear for hours of meditation, returning to bed long after I'd fallen asleep. On the 4th night I woke to feel him slipping into bed beside me around 3 a.m. I rolled over, reaching for him in the darkness. Noah. He moved away from my touch. Not now, Madison. Then when? I sat up, switching on the bedside lamp. We've been here 5 days and you haven't kissed me once. This is our honeymoon. Noah sat up too, his face half in shadow. Physical intimacy isn't the basis for a true connection. Since when? Because that wasn't your philosophy when we were dating. He sighed, looking at me with that same pitying expression from the porch. Our relationship needs to evolve beyond the physical. Celibacy deepens connection. It purifies what we have. Celibacy. I repeated, the word hanging between us like an uninvited guest. On our honeymoon? It's the path I've chosen for us, he said with quiet finality, turning off the light and rolling away from me. I lay in the darkness, listening to his breathing, trying to reconcile the man beside me with the Noah who had once looked into my eyes and told me I was everything he'd ever wanted. The Noah who had swept me into a whirlwind romance and promised me a lifetime of love and passion. Outside, the wind picked up, making the old cabin creak and groan. For the first time, the isolation that had seemed so romantic now felt oppressive. We were miles from anywhere, surrounded by wilderness with only each other for company. And I was beginning to realize I didn't know who each other really was at all. I woke the next morning with a hollow feeling in my chest. Beside me, Noah's side of the bed was already empty and cold. Through the window, I watched a thin mist hover between the pine trees as the early morning light filtered through. The mountains that had once seemed so magical now felt like silent sentinels, trapping me in this increasingly strange situation. The smell of coffee drew me downstairs. Noah stood at the kitchen counter, pouring water into a French press. I hesitated in the doorway, suddenly unsure how to approach my own husband. "Morning," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "Sleep well." He nodded without turning. "I've been up since 5. The sunrise here is extraordinary." Another experience he hadn't thought to share with me. I pushed the thought away and tried a new approach. "I was thinking we could drive to that waterfall the rental owner mentioned. The one with the swimming hole? It's supposed to be warm today." Noah finally turned, holding his coffee mug with both hands like a barrier between us. "If you'd like." 2 hours later, we stood at the edge of a pristine waterfall. The sunlight caught the spray, creating dozens of tiny rainbows. Any other couple would have been taking selfies, maybe stealing kisses. Instead, Noah stood several feet away from me, staring at the cascading water with detached appreciation. "Isn't it gorgeous?" I tried again, moving closer to him. "It's very powerful," he replied. "All that energy constantly flowing. Never stopping, never needing anything." I didn't know how to respond to that. This wasn't the first time since our arrival that Noah had spoken in these strange, abstract terms, like he was delivering a sermon rather than having a conversation. On impulse, I pulled my sundress over my head, revealing the swimsuit I'd worn underneath. "I'm going in." Without waiting for his response, I waded into the swimming hole, gasping as the cool water hit my skin. For a moment, as I floated on my back looking up at the canopy of trees, I felt free. The weight of the growing distance between Noah and me seemed to dissolve in the water. I closed my eyes, letting the gentle current move me. "Madison." Noah's voice startled me. He stood at the edge, still fully dressed. "We should head back. Storm clouds are moving in." I looked up at a perfectly clear blue sky. "There's not a cloud in sight. Trust me. The weather changes quickly up here." We drove back to the cabin in silence. No storm materialized. That evening I made another attempt. I'd found a dusty box of Scrabble in a cabinet and set it up on the coffee table. "Remember how we used to play word games when we first met?" I asked, setting out the tiles. "You kept beating me because you know all those weird two-letter words." Noah glanced at the board without interest. "That seems like a lifetime ago." "It was 2 months ago," I said, a hint of frustration creeping into my voice. He sat across from me, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. After playing in near silence for 20 minutes, with Noah making minimal effort moves, he suddenly stood up. "I need to begin my evening meditation." "It's only 7 o'clock, I protested. "You usually don't start until later." "The practice calls to me when it's time," he said, already heading for the door. "Don't wait up." I swept the Scrabble tiles back into their box with more force than necessary, a few skittering under the couch. As the door clicked shut behind him, I was hit with an overwhelming feeling of abandonment. That night, his absence stretched even longer than usual. At midnight, I finally gave up and went to bed, falling into a restless sleep. I dreamed of being lost in the forest, calling Noah's name, my voice swallowed by the endless trees. The pattern continued for 2 more days. My attempts to reconnect, suggesting a puzzle, cooking his favorite meal, even just trying to have a normal conversation about our future plans, all met with the same distant politeness before he would inevitably disappear for hours. On the 7th day, I woke to find Noah sitting at the foot of the bed watching me sleep. The pale light of dawn cast long shadows across his face. "You were talking in your sleep," he said. I sat up, pulling the covers around me. "What did I say?" "You were calling for me." His expression was unreadable. "You don't need to, Madison. I'm always with you even when I'm not physically present. That's what you need to understand." Something in his tone made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I got out of bed and began to dress, needing to put some distance between us. "Noah, this isn't working," I said finally, turning to face him. "This isn't what I thought our honeymoon would be like. It's not what I thought our marriage would be like. Physical proximity is an illusion," he said, his voice taking on that serene, detached quality that had become so familiar. "True connection exists beyond the flesh. What I'm practicing, what I'm trying to show you, is a higher form of love. By ignoring me, by disappearing every night to do whatever it is you do out there. Meditation opens channels to higher consciousness. The celibacy purifies the connection. In time you'll understand." "No," I said firmly. "I won't. I didn't marry you for higher consciousness. I married you because I loved you, because I thought you loved me." "I love your soul," he replied. "The body is temporary." I shook my head in disbelief. "Where is this coming from? You never talked like this before we got married." He just smiled, that same pitying smile. "I'm going to prepare breakfast. You should meditate on what I've said." Later that day, looking for an extra sweater, I opened what was supposed to be Noah's drawer in the bedroom dresser. It was completely empty. Confused, I checked the closet where he'd hung his clothes. Most were gone. In the bathroom, his toiletry bag had vanished from the counter. It was as if he was never planning to actually live with me in this cabin. With shaking hands I pulled out my phone. We barely had 1 bar of service this far up the mountain, but it would have to do. I needed to talk to someone who knew me, who could tell me I wasn't losing my mind. Ava answered on the 4th ring. Maddie? How's marital bliss? The photos you sent of the cabin look amazing. The sound of my sister's voice broke something in me. Ava, I whispered, moving to the farthest corner of the bedroom so Noah wouldn't hear. Something's wrong. What do you mean? Are you okay? I sank to the floor, knees pulled to my chest. Noah's different. He's not the same person I dated. He disappears for hours every night to meditate. He talks about celibacy and higher consciousness. He won't even touch me. Wait, back up, Ava's voice sharpened. Celibacy? On your honeymoon. He says it purifies our connection. Even saying it out loud sounded absurd. Maddie, that's not normal. I know. And the way he looks at me sometimes, it's like he's seeing something else. Someone else. I lowered my voice further. Ava, I'm scared I made a huge mistake. Do you feel safe? My sister asked, cutting to the heart of it. The question hung in the air. Did I? Noah hadn't threatened me or been aggressive, but something felt deeply wrong. Before I could answer, I heard footsteps on the stairs. I have to go, I whispered. I'll call you tomorrow. As I ended the call, Noah appeared in the doorway. His expression told me he'd heard at least part of the conversation. Who were you talking to? He asked, his voice eerily calm. Just Ava, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Checking in. Noah nodded slowly. Dinner will be ready soon. I made your favorite pasta. But as he turned to go back downstairs, I noticed something I hadn't before. A small key hanging from a cord around his neck. It wasn't his usual house or car key. It was smaller, older looking. I wondered what it opened and why he was keeping it so close. That night I couldn't sleep. The mysterious key around Noah's neck haunted me. What did it open? And why was he wearing it like some kind of talisman? As I pushed my food around at dinner, I'd caught him absently touching it several times, like a nervous habit or a ritual. The pasta he'd made, my supposed favorite, wasn't actually my favorite at all. I preferred penne with vodka sauce. He'd made spaghetti with marinara. It was a small thing, but it felt symbolic of everything wrong between us. He didn't really know me. Or worse, he didn't care to remember. Around midnight, Noah slipped out of bed once again for his nightly meditation. I watched through half-closed eyes as he carefully put on a dark sweater and those hiking boots he'd bought specifically for this trip. Meditation and hiking boots. The disconnect between his words and actions had become too glaring to ignore. I gave him 15 minutes before I got up and pulled on my robe. This conversation couldn't wait until morning. 8 days of our 2-week honeymoon had passed in this bizarre emotional isolation, and I couldn't take it anymore. I found him on the back porch, not cross-legged in meditation as I'd expected, but standing alert, looking out at the dark forest as if waiting for something. The moonlight caught the key around his neck, making it gleam. Noah, I said firmly, stepping outside. The night air was bitingly cold, making me pull my robe tighter. He turned, surprised to see me awake and following him. Madison. You should be sleeping. How can I sleep? Nothing about this situation is normal. You're not embracing the spiritual journey. Stop, I interrupted, my voice louder than I'd intended. Just stop with the spiritual journey talk. You're not meditating. At least not only meditating. You're wearing hiking boots, Noah. You're going somewhere. A flicker of something, annoyance, alarm, crossed his face before his expression smoothed back to that eerie calm. The forest is my temple. I commune with nature. The forest is pitch black and freezing at midnight. Tell me the truth. He took a step toward me and I instinctively backed up. Something must have shown on my face because he stopped, his eyes narrowing slightly. You don't trust me. How can I? The words burst out of me. You've been a stranger since the moment we arrived. You disappear every night. You won't touch me. Your things aren't even unpacked in our room. What is going on? Noah stood very still, the moonlight casting half his face in shadow. When he spoke, his voice had a new edge to it. Our union was meant for something greater than physical gratification, Madison. I chose you because you're perfect for the role. Role? What role? A chill that had nothing to do with the night air ran through me. The vessel. The feminine divine energy. He touched the key at his neck. I've been preparing for years, waiting for someone like you. When I saw you in that bookstore, I knew you were the one. My stomach knotted. The one for what, exactly? The ascension requires balance. Male and female energies aligned but purified through abstinence. His eyes had taken on a feverish gleam. The ritual can only be completed when the moon reaches its zenith during the equinox. I took another step back, my heart hammering. What ritual? Noah, you're scaring me. There's nothing to fear. His voice was soothing now, as if talking to a frightened child. You'll be transcended. Your physical form will become a conduit for something greater. My physical form? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. It's an honor, Madison. Few are chosen. He reached for my hand, but I jerked away. I didn't sign up for this. Whatever this is. His expression hardened. You took vows. Till death do us part. The way he emphasized death sent another wave of fear through me. I backed toward the door. I need some time alone. To process. Noah watched me for a long moment before nodding. Reflection is good. But remember, what's coming cannot be stopped. It's already in motion. I retreated inside, locking the bedroom door behind me. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold my phone. I didn't call Ava again. I didn't want to frighten her, and what would I even say? Hi sis, I think my new husband might be in a cult and I'm supposed to be some kind of vessel? Instead I opened my browser. With the poor reception, pages loaded agonizingly slowly. I searched terms like grounds for annulment, how to annul marriage quickly, and signs of religious cult behavior. As web page after web page confirmed my growing suspicions about Noah's behavior, a plan began to form. I learned that marriages could be annulled for fraud, when one spouse had misrepresented themselves fundamentally before the wedding. If this bizarre spiritual obsession wasn't misrepresentation, I didn't know what was. Noah wasn't the man I thought I'd married. He'd hidden his true self, his true beliefs, until he had me isolated in this mountain cabin. By dawn, my eyes were burning from exhaustion and screen light, but I'd found a lawyer in the nearest town who specialized in family law. According to the website, she'd handled several cases of marriage annulment. It was Sunday, so I'd have to wait until Monday to call. But first thing tomorrow, I was getting out of this situation. When Noah finally returned to the cabin as the first rays of sunlight crept across the floor, I pretended to be asleep. I heard him pause outside the locked bedroom door, trying the handle quietly. Then his footsteps retreated downstairs. I waited until I heard the shower running before I got up, dressed quickly, and steeled myself for the confrontation ahead. I found him in the kitchen making tea as if everything was normal. Steam rose from the mug, fogging the window that looked out on the dense forest surrounding us. I'm leaving today, I announced, standing in the doorway with my arms crossed protectively over my chest. Noah didn't look surprised. He calmly added honey to his tea. That would be unwise. I've made my decision. This marriage was a mistake. It was fate, not a mistake. He stirred his tea slowly, deliberately. You can't fight what's meant to be, Madison. Watch me. My voice was stronger than I felt. I'm calling a lawyer tomorrow to file for annulment. You can stay here with your rituals and your celibacy and whatever else you've been hiding. I expected anger, arguments, maybe even pleading. What I got was far more unsettling. Noah simply smiled, a small knowing smile that didn't reach his eyes. Of course. If that's what you need to do. He sipped his tea. I'll help you pack. His calm acceptance was more frightening than resistance would have been. It felt like he knew something I didn't, like my declaration of leaving was somehow part of his plan. I can pack myself, I said, backing away. I'll be out of here by noon. True to his word, Noah didn't try to stop me as I threw my belongings into my suitcase. He moved around the cabin with that same eerie serenity, occasionally touching the key around his neck. Once I caught him looking at his watch and muttering something under his breath like he was counting down to something. At 10 a.m., I managed to get enough signal to call the lawyer's office, leaving an urgent message explaining I needed help with an annulment as soon as possible. To my immense relief, the lawyer herself called back within 30 minutes. This is Patricia Westfield, a crisp, professional voice said. I received your message about an annulment case. I locked myself in the bathroom to take the call, speaking in hushed tones as I explained my situation. The whirlwind romance, the sudden change in Noah's behavior, the spiritual talk and isolation. Based on what you're describing, we likely have grounds for fraud, she confirmed. I can draft the initial papers today and send them electronically. But Ms. Wells, if you feel unsafe in any way, I strongly advise you to leave immediately. I'm already packing, I assured her. Good. There's a women's shelter in town if you need somewhere to stay tonight. I can send you the address. By 11:30, I'd received the preliminary annulment papers by email. I forwarded them to Noah without comment, a formal declaration that our brief marriage was ending. The relief I felt seeing those legal terms, dissolution, misrepresentation, irreconcilable circumstances, was overwhelming. There was a way out of this nightmare. But as I zipped my suitcase closed, I realized Noah had gone quiet. Too quiet. The cabin, always eerily silent, now felt like it was holding its breath. Noah? I called out, my voice thin with tension. No answer. I crept down the stairs, suitcase in hand, ready to leave regardless of where he'd gone. The main floor of the cabin was empty. A note sat on the kitchen counter, written in Noah's precise handwriting. Gone to prepare. Back by sundown. Your journey begins tonight. A chill ran through me. Whatever journey he had planned, I had no intention of being here when he returned. I glanced at my watch, just past noon. Plenty of time to get down the mountain to civilization, to safety. I did one final sweep of the cabin, checking drawers and closets to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything important. My wedding band I deliberately left on the bedside table. As I moved through the living room, dragging my suitcase behind me, something caught my eye, the corner of the rug near the stone fireplace. It wasn't lying flat like the rest of the carefully arranged decor. One edge was slightly rumpled, as if it had been hastily repositioned. I should have just left. Every instinct told me to walk out the door, get in the car, and never look back. But some stubborn part of me needed to know, needed to understand what had happened to the man I thought I knew. Setting my suitcase by the door, I crossed to the fireplace and pulled back the rug. The wooden floorboards underneath looked identical to the rest of the floor at first glance. Then I noticed the outline, a perfect square with a small metal ring set flush with the wood. A trapdoor. My heart hammered in my chest. This must be what Noah's mysterious key opened. I tugged at the metal ring. The trapdoor didn't budge. Of course it was locked. Noah had the key around his neck, probably deliberately taking it with him to ensure I couldn't discover whatever was hidden below. I stood, running my hands through my hair in frustration. Then I remembered. When we'd first arrived, the rental owner had given us a small box of cabin essentials. Extra batteries, matches, a first aid kit, and a ring of spare keys. For emergency use only, she'd said with a wink. In case you lose yours or get locked out. I dug through the kitchen drawers until I found the small wooden box. Inside, among various keys, was an old-fashioned skeleton key similar to the one Noah wore. My fingers trembled as I carried it back to the trapdoor. The key slid into the lock with a soft click. One turn and the mechanism released. I pulled the trapdoor open, revealing a narrow wooden staircase descending into darkness. The air that wafted up was cool and damp, with an unpleasant undertone I couldn't quite identify, like incense mixed with something metallic. I hesitated at the top of the stairs, every horror movie I'd ever seen flashing through my mind. This is insane, I whispered to myself. But I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and began to descend. The basement was larger than I expected, the ceiling low enough that I had to duck my head in places. My phone's light cut through the darkness, illuminating sections of the space in a harsh white glow that created deep, shifting shadows. The first thing I noticed was the folding table against the wall, covered with electronic equipment. 3 laptop computers sat open, their screens dark, connected to a complex series of wires and small black boxes with blinking lights. As I approached, the screens suddenly illuminated, triggered by motion sensors. I gasped. Each screen showed a different view of the cabin. The bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living room, even the porch. Every space where I'd been living, eating, sleeping, all under constant surveillance. One screen showed the empty living room above me, the open trapdoor visible in the corner of the frame. How long had he been watching me? Even in my most private moments when I thought I was alone, I'd never truly been alone. The violation of it made me physically ill. But there was more to this basement than just surveillance. My light beams swept across the far corner, revealing what at first looked like an altar. Moving closer, I saw it was a small table draped in red cloth. On it stood dozens of candles in various stages of burning, the melted wax forming stalactite-like formations. The sickly sweet smell of incense was stronger here. Behind the table, the wall was covered with photos. Photos of me. Hundreds of them, some I recognized from my social media accounts, others clearly taken without my knowledge. Me leaving my apartment building, teaching in my classroom, shopping at the grocery store. Images spanning months before I'd even met Noah. In the center of this collage was a larger photo of my face, cut from our single hastily arranged engagement photo. My eyes had been outlined in some dark substance, and strange symbols were drawn on my forehead and cheeks. "Oh my God," I breathed, backing away. My light beam swung wildly across the basement, revealing more horrors with each sweep. A dress form stood in another corner, draped with my wedding gown, the one I'd carefully packed away after our courthouse ceremony. Noah had insisted I bring it to the cabin for memories. Now it stood like a ghostly version of myself, adorned with more of those strange symbols painted directly onto the delicate fabric. Little bundles of herbs and crystals hung from the sleeves. On a workbench nearby lay personal items that had gone missing over the past week. My hairbrush, a pair of earrings, even my lipstick. Each item had been arranged in precise patterns like components in some twisted spell. A leather-bound journal caught my eye. I picked it up with shaking hands, opening to a random page. Noah's familiar handwriting filled the pages, but the content was nothing like the thoughtful messages he'd written in cards to me during our courtship. These were rambling passages about celestial alignments, energy vessels, and ritual transcendence. My name appeared frequently alongside phrases like perfect conduit and worthy sacrifice. I flipped to the most recent entry, dated yesterday. Asterisk, the vessel questions too much. Alignment with the equinox leaves no room for delay. If she attempts to leave, the contingency must be employed. The ritual will proceed with or without her willing participation. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Contingency. Sacrifice. This wasn't just some eccentric spiritual practice. It was something far more sinister. And I had walked right into it, blinded by what I thought was love. A floor plan of the cabin was pinned to another wall with exit points marked in red. Next to it hung a detailed schedule, with times and dates arranged around astronomical events. Today's date was circled multiple times with a single phrase written beside it: final preparation. The realization crashed over me. Noah hadn't gone for a meditation walk. He was somewhere nearby, preparing for whatever ritual he had planned for tonight. And according to his own journal, he was prepared to proceed, with or without my willing participation. As if confirming my fears, I heard a noise from above, the creak of the front porch step. Noah was back. Earlier than his note had promised. I froze, my phone light illuminating the nightmare around me. The open trapdoor suddenly seemed miles away. I had to get out. I had to get past Noah somehow and escape this mountain before sundown. Before I became part of the shrine he'd built in my image. I killed my phone's flashlight instantly, plunging myself into darkness. My heart thundered so loudly I was certain Noah would hear it through the floorboards above. The front door opened and closed. Footsteps crossed the living room directly over my head, pausing at the spot where my suitcase still waited by the door. "Madison." Noah's voice called out, deceptively normal. Then more sharply, "Madison." I pressed myself against the cold basement wall, frantically scanning the darkness for another way out. There had to be something, a cellar door, a window, anything. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through the open trapdoor, I noticed a small rectangular outline on the far wall. A window. My only chance. The footsteps above moved faster now, checking rooms. I heard him climbing the stairs to the bedroom. I had maybe 30 seconds before he discovered the open trapdoor. I crept across the basement toward the potential window, bumping against a table. Something heavy fell with a dull thud. I froze. The footsteps above stopped too. Then came the sound I'd been dreading, Noah's rapid descent down the steps. I lunged for the window, my fingers scrabbling at its edges. It was sealed shut, the glass grimy and cold. "I knew you'd find your way down here eventually." Noah's voice came from behind me, calm and almost admiring. "You've always been perceptive. It's one of the qualities that makes you perfect." I turned slowly. Noah stood at the bottom of the stairs, silhouetted against the light from above. The key still hung from his neck, but now he also held something in his right hand. A knife? No, a large crystal, its edges rough and sharp. The preparations are complete, he said, taking a step toward me. It's time for the final ritual. Noah, this isn't you, I said, though I no longer believed it. The man I thought I'd known had never existed. You need help. We can get you help. He smiled, and in the dim light, the expression transformed his once handsome face into something predatory and alien. I don't need help, Madison. I need you. Your energy. Your essence. He gestured to the shrine with his free hand. Do you understand how long I've waited? How carefully I selected you? Watching, learning your patterns, ensuring you were the perfect vessel. His voice had taken on a cadence I'd never heard before, rising and falling with religious fervor. When you entered that bookstore, it wasn't chance. Nothing about our meeting was random. I glanced desperately around the basement. The only exit was the stairs behind him. But there were potential weapons everywhere. Tools on the workbench, heavy electronics on the surveillance table. I just needed a distraction. What exactly do you think is going to happen tonight? I asked, trying to sound curious rather than terrified. I shifted slightly, putting the workbench within reach. The equinox alignment only happens once every 77 years, Noah said, his eyes gleaming with fanaticism. When the vessel is prepared correctly, the transfer of energy creates a gateway. I will transcend my physical form, and you... He paused almost tenderly. You will become my eternal anchor in this realm. And if I don't want to be your anchor? I inched my hand toward the workbench. His expression hardened. Your consent would make the ritual more powerful. But it's not required. In the next moment, several things happened at once. Noah lunged forward with surprising speed. My hand closed around the first object it found on the workbench, a heavy metal flashlight. I swung it with all my strength, connecting with his outstretched arm. The crystal flew from his grasp, shattering against the concrete floor. Noah howled, not in pain but in rage. Do you know how long it took to charge that crystal with your essence? He reached for me again, but his foot slipped on the scattered crystal shards. I didn't hesitate. I brought the flashlight down again, this time against his temple. Noah crumpled to the floor, momentarily stunned. It was my only chance. I leaped over his prone form and scrambled up the wooden stairs, slamming the trapdoor behind me. There was no way to lock it from this side. I dragged the heavy rug over it, then pushed the nearby armchair on top for good measure. It wouldn't hold him long, but maybe long enough. I grabbed my suitcase and ran for the front door, yanking it open. The afternoon sun momentarily blinded me. Behind me, I heard a dull thud as Noah pushed against the trapdoor. The rental car sat in the gravel driveway, but my keys were in my purse. My purse that was nowhere in sight. Noah must have hidden it, anticipating my escape attempt. The nearest town was miles away, down winding mountain roads. I'd never make it on foot before he caught up. The forest then. I could lose him among the trees, circle back to the road when I was sure he wasn't following. It was my only option. I abandoned my suitcase and ran toward the tree line, the undergrowth scratching at my legs. Behind me, I heard the front door of the cabin slam open, followed by Noah's voice, distorted with rage. Madison, you can't stop what's meant to be. The forest swallowed me. I crashed through branches and leaped over fallen logs, my breath coming in painful gasps. My foot caught on a root, sending me sprawling. I lay there for a precious second, the taste of dirt and pine needles in my mouth, before forcing myself up again. Noah's voice echoed through the trees, sometimes close, sometimes distant, as if the forest itself was playing tricks with the sound. The ritual will be complete, Madison. You're only making it harder on yourself. I had no sense of direction, no plan beyond putting distance between us. The sun was starting to dip toward the horizon, a cruel reminder of Noah's written note. Back by sundown. Your journey begins tonight. Panic threatened to overwhelm me. I stumbled into a small clearing and stopped, desperate to catch my breath and get my bearings. That's when I heard it, the faint sound of running water. The stream we'd visited days earlier. If I could reach it, I could follow it downhill, eventually reaching the road that wound alongside it for a stretch. I moved more carefully now, listening for Noah while making my way toward the sound of water. The stream appeared through the trees, its surface catching the late afternoon light. Relief flooded me as I recognized where I was. Less than a mile from the main road. A twig snapped behind me. I whirled around to see Noah standing at the edge of the clearing, his temple bloodied from where I'd struck him. Gone was any pretense of the calm, spiritual man. His face was contorted with rage and something else. Desperation. The alignment begins at sunset, he snarled. We're running out of time. There is no we, Noah, I said, backing toward the stream. There never was. You don't understand what you're rejecting, he said, stalking toward me. Immortality. Power beyond comprehension. I just wanted someone to love me, I replied, my voice breaking. That's all. Something flickered in his eyes. Not compassion but calculation. I can be that again, he said, his tone suddenly gentle, the voice of the man I thought I'd married. We can forget all this. Start over. For a heartbeat I almost believed him. Almost. But the blood on his temple and the manic gleam in his eyes told the truth. No, I said firmly. We can't. I turned and plunged into the stream, the cold water soaking my jeans. Noah shouted behind me, his voice rising to a scream of frustration as I waded to the other side and scrambled up the bank. I didn't look back. I ran alongside the stream until my legs burned and my lungs felt like they would burst. When I finally reached the road, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of deep orange and purple. I flagged down the first car I saw, an elderly couple who took one look at my wild eyes and soaked clothes and immediately offered help. As we drove down the mountain toward town, past the turnoff to what was supposed to have been my honeymoon cabin, I watched the forest recede behind us. Somewhere in those woods, Noah's alignment was failing, his ritual incomplete. I don't know if he's still there, waiting in that cabin with its shrine to a woman who never really existed except in his twisted fantasy. I don't know if he's looking for another vessel to replace me. The authorities searched the area after I filed my report, but found no trace of him, just an empty cabin with a locked trapdoor they couldn't find the key to open. The annulment went through quickly on grounds of fraud and undisclosed mental illness. I moved to a new city, changed my name, started therapy. But sometimes I still wake up in the middle of the night, imagining I hear footsteps outside my window. And I always check behind the rugs, looking for hidden doors that might conceal the shrines of false prophets.